you're all here with us. We have some exciting stuff to talk about today, continuing our message of spreading the word. We had a really, I thought, a great conversation last month when we talked about social media, and today we're going to talk about traditional media and a little bit more. So we are excited to have all of you here to share with us. And we're going to hope that, to echo what Sophia is saying, we're hoping that you can participate as much as possible. We're going to change things up a bit on this one so that you all have the opportunity to share some of your experiences with PAYS, spreading the word, whether it be traditional media or social media or any way. So here is our panelists. Today we have with us myself, I believe Dr. Baker's here as well. Sophia's here with us. Phyllis is here. Jeff from EPIS is here, and Elise is here with us today. So thank you all expert panelists for being here. We appreciate you. So sticking with the tradition that we had done the last couple webinars, we are going to ask everyone to take this moment, go on to EPIS's Facebook page. The most recent post on there is going to ask you a question about how you're reaching parents with prevention messaging. So we're going to talk about PAYS and how we're reaching parents a little bit today. But what we want to know is, what are you all doing to reach parents with any prevention messaging, whether it be about PAYS or programming or prevention science, whatever it is. We want you to pull up at EPIS Penn State on Facebook and find the most recent post and comment what you how you're sharing any message with parents specifically. So we'll give you a minute to do that, and then we'll be back at it. Go ahead and like the post too while you're in there. Nice. I'm seeing some people do some things on there now. And I'm going to go ahead and ask you to go ahead and put in the chat as well. So if you've got some great ways to share messaging with parents, go ahead and throw that in our chat too. So I see some people sharing some things on the Facebook post. We'd love to have you. Oh, we've got some stuff, parent-teacher conferences. We've got engaging with parents by advertising on grocery store carts. Love that. That's a classic. Love it. Handouts is something that Alexandria is doing. Thank you for sharing. Newspaper articles. I'd love to hear more about that, Amanda. And Joelle sharing through social media, e-blasts. Love that. Great. Excellent. So continue to go ahead and share that. Put that in the chat as well. We're going to get to that in a minute. So, but before we do, I wanted to take this moment to introduce our panelists today, our expert panelists straight from the field, doing the work just like all of you are doing with the PAYS. And today we're highlighting Ron Rolon. Ron Rolon is the manager of prevention and federal programs at Bucks County Intermediate Unit, and he actually couldn't be here with us today, but he has a really great message to share with all of you, and we have a video of that. So I sat down and did a Zoom interview with Ron, so we're about to share that in a couple minutes. So he has a lot of great input for all of us. So I'm excited to share that information with you. Also with us is Erica Usher. She's the prevention program manager from Fayette County Drug and Alcohol Commission. She's going to share some of her experience with hosting webinars and other events all around the Pennsylvania Youth Survey. So I'm excited for all of you to hear the great stuff that she's doing in Fayette County as well. So welcome to Erica, and we wish Ron could be here with us, but we're glad that he's still able to get his message out there. So are we putting in the chat how we're sharing with parents? If we're not on social media, we wanted to give everybody that opportunity to do that as well too. So what is the best way to reach parents? Tell us, how are you reaching parents? Put that in the chat. And go ahead and repeat You know, if you've put something on social media, we want to hear it in the chat too. Because again, not everybody's on social media. Newsletters, sending it with their children. Great. Face-to-face events, food banks, that's a good one. Good way to reach parents. Radio. These are all great. And really lining up with our message today about traditional media. So I love that. This is great. Great. Going to community events, excellent. Excellent. So thank you all for sharing that information. And we are excited to hear from Ron first, actually. So I'm going to kick it over to Sophia. She's going to play the video interview between Ron and I. And Ron actually is going to touch on how he in Bucks County is reaching parents too. He's going to talk about his interaction with school districts, because he is directly associated with the school district as being a part of the intermediate unit, which is awesome, right? He has that great opportunity, but it shares some information about how to reach parents as well. So Sophia, if you don't mind, go ahead and I'll stop sharing so you can share and play away. Experience with the Pennsylvania Youth Survey. So Ron, why don't you introduce yourself to the group and we'll go from there.
Sure, I'm happy to do it. I'm sorry I can't be there in person. I have something going on during this meeting, but I'm happy to share this information. I'm Ron Rolon. I work for the Bucks County Intermediate Unit located over in Doylestown, Pennsylvania. I am the Prevention and Federal Programs Manager. That's my role here.
Awesome, thanks. So what we're really talking about this month is spreading the word about PAYS. And I know you have lots of experience in this field, and you've worked with the PAYS a lot with a lot of different groups of people. So can you share with us, we'll start by you explaining a little bit about your experience spreading the word about PAYS to your school districts.
Sure, I'm happy to do that. I certainly have an advantage because I work for an intermediate unit. So we already have great working relationships with our districts. We have many, many advisory councils that allow us to disseminate information on a regular basis. I mean, we have advisory councils for superintendents, for central administrative office, for high school principals, for middle school principals, for elementary school principals, for school counselors, student assistance programs. I mean, you name it, we have an advisory council. So that during these advisory councils, we're able to encourage schools to participate in the PAYS and tell them the importance of participating in the PAYS. We also have an opportunity to help schools interpret their data once they receive their results. So this is done with working with a team that includes a representative from the Southeast Council of PA. They're really our lead SAP office, our single county authority, which is the Bucks County Drug and Alcohol Commission. And we have somebody from Bucks County Behavioral Health and Development Programs. So this really allows us for an opportunity to look at the data with a really keen eye on a specialty area. And then we develop a report that's pretty easy to read and understand for school administrators. In the past, we've been asked to present this report at staff meetings, at coalition meetings, at board of director meetings. So that's how we spread the word about PAYS.
Wow, that's huge. I know, like, having any regular interaction with school districts is such a bonus to help do any kind of prevention work.
Yeah.
So the fact that you're doing that with PAYS is really great. Thanks for sharing.
Yeah.
Well, let's switch gears a little bit. Can you tell us a little bit about how you spread the word about PAYS to your community stakeholders?
Well, a lot of our a lot of our school districts have a community mobilizer that services that area. So we have a really great working relationship where we can engage the communities through these catchment areas. Some of them are part of a CTC process. Some of them are not CTC, but yet they are community mobilizers that do work. Either some of them do direct work in schools or just within the school community. So that's really the venue that we use to reach out to community stakeholders.
Awesome. Well, what about parents? Because I know for us, that's always a struggle, really spreading the word to parents about PAYS. You know, we've tried social media, we've done a bunch of different things. We've talked about hosting parent events. But what do you do to spread the word about PAYS to parents?
Yeah, you're right. That is a little trickier. But, you know, a lot of our prevention providers actually provide parent education programs to home and schools for several of our districts. I know I'm one of the providers, and I do a lot of home and school parent programs. So during these sessions, I actually talk about the PAYS when I'm speaking about the data and use of current drugs and drug trends. I always reference the Pennsylvania Youth Survey as a source for gathering some of this data. So I really talk about the importance of PAYS for us providers to know what's going on in the schools.
So, you know, it sounds like, you know, really making PAYS a part of your regular conversations with everybody. You know, that seems like the plan. That seems like something that you're focusing on, and I love that. You know, incorporating PAYS into everything you're doing. That's huge.
Yeah.
So, how about any roadblocks that you've overcome related to PAYS recruitment?
Well, you know, that's a good question. We've certainly had some roadblocks. We've had some controversy with the PAYS. You know, since the PAYS survey is the same survey for 6th grade, for 8th grade, for 10th grade, and 12th grade, we've had a lot of parent pushback. You know, I've been to a couple of board meetings where parents stood up and were very concerned. They were concerned about asking 6th graders the question that may not be appropriate, right? For example, I don't know, in the last 30 days, have you tried heroin? Well, some parent might not think that's appropriate to ask the 6th grader. You know, there's also this myth that we know that asking students a question about this may actually put the idea in their head. But, you know, we're really lucky that our Bucks County Drug and Alcohol Commission made a conscious effort. They made a video and provided some education to the community to really help dispel some of these myths. But no doubt, Lee, there's certainly some controversy when it comes to the PAYS.
Ron, that sounds awesome, and I'd love to see that video if possible.
Yeah, actually, it's on the Bucks County Drug and Alcohol Commission website. I'll put the link at the bottom of the screen here so folks can check it out.
Awesome, thank you so much. So, anything else that you want to tell us about what your team does, what the county does related to PAYS? Anything else?
Yeah, you know what? I'll share real quick what we did this year. You know, in the past, when the county report was released, we held this media event. We invited school representatives, community agencies, law enforcement. We brought everybody together to kind of learn about the data and really share it. And then next to the room where we had this event, we sort of had like this, for lack of a better word, this vendor fair type opportunity where we had some agencies who do work in schools, promote their work and offer their services to schools. But obviously with the pandemic restrictions, it made it really difficult. We weren't sure that people were going to come out. So this year we went a different way. We actually recorded some pre-recorded videos, just mini videos. We're talking about 5 minutes or so on a really specific area of concern that showed up during the pandemic. We had experts in a certain area provided an overview of a subject matter related to the topic. So for those who are interested, I'm actually going to share my screen real quick with you, Lee, just to kind of give you a snapshot of what it looks like.
Perfect.
Can you confirm that you can see this?
Yep. All
right, great. So this, we called it a PAYS to Know video. We kicked it off with somebody from the Department of Education, Dr. Dana Malakovic, who's a great partner in prevention, and she provided an overview of the PAYS and really talked about the importance of PAYS. And then you'll see there we had a different session on pathways to mental health. We had one on connecting school and community connections through post-social activities. We had one on creating a sense of belonging, and we talked about bullying programs in the county. And then we wrapped it up with a series on drug trends. And all this data really came from the Pennsylvania Youth Survey. So if anybody's interested in that, you can actually just go to YouTube and Google it, PAYS to Know video series 2022, and it'll come up. But it'll just give you a sense of some of the work that we've done this year. Because of the pandemic restrictions, we couldn't bring a lot of people together. So we created these little mini videos. So that's what we did.
Wow. That's great. Honestly, this has been awesome. You know, Ron, you are awesome. The work you're doing is great. And we really appreciate you sharing with us. So folks, this has been Ron Rolon from Bucks County IU. So thank you so much, Ron.
You're welcome. I'm going to put my contact information at the bottom, Lee, in case anybody just wants to learn a little bit more about any of this stuff we're doing. I'm happy to share, okay?
I'm glad you are, because I'm sure lots of people are going to want to know more.
All right, I mean, have a good day.
Thanks, you too.
All right.
Okay, so that was Ron. Lots of great information in there. Someone had asked in the chat about how to find this video series, and if you just Google "It Pays to Know" video series, it'll come up. So, and we can follow up with we'll follow up, if Sophia, if you don't mind following up with the group. Ron's contact information, but also the link to the Bucks County YouTube channel. I did look it up while Ron was talking yet again, and they're all there. There's myth busting. It's really a lot of great information. So please check that out for sure. And thank you, Sophia, for sending that out to the group. So I think it's important to, Ron's message is this idea of incorporating PAYS into simply everything we do. And I know that that's something, even with programming that we have going on within our agency, we are always trying to, if there's some data or something that's referenced, we're always trying to pull that from the PAYS. I think that that's key. I've done that with LST. It's important to draw that conclusion in life skills training for students to see that not everybody is using tobacco products or other drugs. And I've used data right from the PAYS. So here's that connection with the youth. And I think that that's a great message from Ron about how important it is to really have PAYS in the back of your mind during really anything you're doing in prevention. So. All right. So next we have Erica Usher from Fayette County Drug and Alcohol Commission. So I'm going to ask her to introduce herself, and we really invited Erica here to talk about. I know that I know this because Erica's my supervisor, so I have to confess that to the group. If you don't know, she's my boss, you guys. So I know everything she does, and she knows everything I do. So she has a great message to share about some traditional media type things. So we've hosted webinars, we've hosted information sessions, and really how we ended up doing some of our events were based on data in the PAYS. So we invited Erica to share some of her expertise and her experiences with all of you today. So I'm going to kick it over to Erica and let her take it away.
Hello, everyone. I'm Erica Usher. I'm the Prevention Program Manager for Fayette County Drug and Alcohol Commission and one of the members of the Communities That Care of Fayette County Coalition. So I'm going to talk from wearing both hats because the PAYS is so important to both of those aspects of my work life. As Lee was introducing me, I was laughing. This photo is from an event that we had where we were talking about PAYS. And the joke is always, I'm a very animated speaker, lots of hands and facial expressions. It does not lend well to be photographed. No, you'll always end up with a nice funny face. So let me start by saying I've worked in the field of prevention for a while. This is 20 years that I've been with my organization. And when I became a supervisor, I remember this very specifically, trying to figure out how to go from this program delivery perspective to more of a supervisory role and evaluation role, and how to decide what we were going to do and how we were going to invest. And I remember learning about PAYS because I'll be honest, prior to that point, that wasn't a part of my work experience. I didn't know what it was. And when I learned about it, I can remember very specifically going to the executive director at the time and saying, "Did you know about this? Why are we not using this information? Like this is amazing. This is exactly what we should be using." And found out that our county did not have very strong participation in the PAYS. Now, I'm also going to clarify that by saying this was prior to PAYS being made free and widely available to all school districts. this was at a time when the schools were selected by random sample, and if they wanted to participate as well, they could choose to do that, but at a cost. And so one of the first things that we did in our organization was to earmark some funding so that we could pay for all of our schools to participate in PAYS. And that was really important to me so that we could have county level data. And I wanted the school districts to have their data as well, but we really wanted to have some widespread county data. And so we did that. We had the report and started to look at it, and my love of PAYS has grown from there. I was sort of laughing to myself a little bit as Ron and Lee's interview was going on, because I just said earlier this morning, it's important to me to make PAYS a part of all conversations that I'm having that are driving why we're doing the things that we're doing. So that was supported by that conversation as well. It was important to me, since PAYS was not a thing in my county at one point, and there were people who, we weren't doing it, and then there were definitely people who weren't using it once we were, that if I keep talking about it and referencing it, to make it a thing for people to be like, oh, hey, what is that? Can you tell me a little bit more about that? So that's an approach that I personally take, and that's an approach that our office takes, and that's an approach that our coalition also takes. So let me explain our coalition's use of PAYS. So when we were getting started, anyone that's familiar with Communities That Care, that model, you use data to help decide what your priority risk and protective factors are. And our coalition was being supported by my agency as the fiduciary agent. And so I had heavy involvement in the beginning, but recognizing my role as this is a separate organization, this is an entity, I did not want to influence their decisions about what to focus on in any way. I wanted the data to speak for that. So we had a team of people who reviewed everything, and I'll be honest, we do have substance use in our county. But interestingly enough, what our coalition chose to focus on as a priority risk factor was depressive symptoms. And then the priority protective factors that they chose to focus on related to opportunities and rewards for pro-social involvement. And so I'm actually really proud to say there was a lot of evaluation of the data, and the CTC process does, push for you to do that. What is the most widespread? What is impacting the most number of people? What is the highest severity? What do you have capacity to change? And so, we did that, and that's what the group came down to. And then we all sort of sat back and said, okay, how are we going to do this? How are we going to figure out how we're going to address it? And that started a whole learning experience for all of us about what were evidence-based programs and practices that would speak to those particular risk and protective factors. So I start all of that. I'm giving you that information up front because so then what have we done with PAYS? How do we talk to people about it? How do we make sure that all of our stakeholders know about it? Well, in the spring of 2021, we hosted a webinar about PAYS. So people were not getting together. We really wanted to talk to stakeholders, both school district and staff, as well as organizations, service organizations, youth serving organizations. We wanted to talk to them about PAYS, and the idea behind that was, let's get them looking at this data and to be prepared for the next time that the survey is going to be done. We wanted to make sure that our districts were still engaged for it to happen, and that our community was on board for the data to be collected. And so we had a webinar, reviewed data, invited people to come and to learn about what does prevention really mean? How can you use risk and protective factors to influence the experiences of youth? And how can we be really smart and use our resources wisely to do all of those things? And so we, as a follow-up to this webinar, we also invited individuals to sort of sign up for some extra TA. It was, reach out to us and we can do some more one-on-one or small group work about what out of the PAYS data is important to you based on your perspective. You know, if you're a school, let's talk about your individual school data. If you're a youth serving organization that serves all districts in our county, and you're really focused on truancy and attendance, you know, let's look at let's take a deeper dive into some of these things in PAYS and what the data could be telling us. So we did that. And I'm going to say all along the way, as we had conversations with individuals, to me, what's so important for us to educate them about is that all of this comes down to risk and protective factors. The survey, all of these questions, and we're talking about youth behaviors and what their perception of the world is. And what we're really trying to get at is what is their picture of risk and how protected are they? And that's going to give us some good indicators as to how successful that they're going to be, and how can we change that? How can we build protection? How can we minimize risk? So lots of conversations about risk and protection. So then fast forward to, you know, there's so much conversation during the pandemic and post-pandemic that about youth mental health. And there were so many conversations. Our school districts were saying, we have all this anxiety, we have all of these kids that are depressed, and we're really concerned about youth mental health. We're really concerned about youth mental health. Well, our CTC coalition sort of steps in and said, hey, let us help. We're also concerned about youth mental health, and we have been prior to the pandemic. This was something that we identified a while ago that we felt was really pressing and concerning. And because of that, we've done some research already on some things that we'd like to suggest for the groups to do. And so we started this journey of how can we get that information in front of as many people who were decision makers as possible. So before I talk specifically everything that was included in our We Can Make the Difference event, let me say we decided to host an event. By this point, people were willing to be together. And so we partnered with Penn State Fayette to host an event there for professionals to come and learn. And we framed this in a way, it was very intentional in our conversations and planning, that we didn't want to make this about come to this event so you can learn how youth mental health is a concern in our county. It was sort of like, we wanted there to be action steps. We wanted them to understand this is a thing. We will talk to you a little bit about how it's a thing. We'll give you some details on it, but it was really important for our group to say, we want you to leave with tools on how you can impact this. And I can remember some of those planning conversations of, if nothing else, if someone leaves this event and does nothing, they don't take any intentional action, how can we ensure that we have changed them for the betterment of focusing on youth mental health? It was so trust me when I say it was very intentional in how we could make that happen, not trusting that everybody was going to be on board like, yes, let's go, I want to do all of these things. We wanted there to be options for people who are ready to do that, but that no matter what, every person in the room was better equipped to impact youth mental health in our county. And so that's sort of how the title even came about, the We Can Make the Difference. It wasn't, we didn't want to scare people and say how what a concern youth mental health was. It was, we all understand that. So here's what we're going to do. You can all do something. And if you come to this, you're going to walk away with something that you can do. So the We Can Make the Difference event, I was one of the speakers at this event, as was Winterhalter, and we spoke about PAYS. We made it very clear that we wanted to talk to the entire group to say, here's how we know that this is a thing, and here's how we knew this was a concern prior to the COVID-19 pandemic. Here's why we were already focused on that. And that was important to us to sort of give some credibility to our coalition and why we chose to focus on it, and to show how long we had been doing this work to research it. It wasn't spur of the moment. We had been working on this for a bit. So we talked about PAYS, we talked about what it looked like in our county, and pulled out some very specific points about some experiences that youth were having, even talking about some of the, I'm going to say some of this was for impact for them, that when we're talking about depressive symptoms, here's what some of those questions look like for youth. You know, all in all, I'm inclined to think that I'm a failure. When think about that, when we would share the numbers of here's the number of students that are being impacted by this, it's heartbreaking. So we did want to tug on some heartstrings to make them remember, and then give them the tools to make change. So we talked about PACE, and then we invited Dr. Aaron Weiner to talk to the group about adverse childhood experiences. And in his preparation for his presentation, I talked to him at length about how we wanted to connect this to risk and protection, right? That if youth have these experiences, they are more likely, they're already more at risk. And so we wanted to be able to show there is an opportunity to build that protection, and not just say, oh, there's nothing that we can do, but that we can very intentionally make change. Then we also question, persuade, refer, train everyone. So if anybody is familiar with QPR training, it is meant to give individuals the tools to intervene with suicide ideation, suicide plans, suicide thoughts. And so we said, yep, everybody's going to get QPR trained, everyone. So here was that idea. Whether or not they realized it, they were going to be more equipped to address youth mental health, right? They already gave them a tool. Then we presented them a whole menu of evidence-based programs and practices that have impact on depressive symptoms, and said, hey, these are things that we as a coalition, that we as organizations within this coalition have invested in resources to make available to our community. So pick what you think is going to work for you, right? If you're interested in this, see us, but know that these things exist and that we're here and we want to be your partner. And we chose these things because we already know, we did the research, it's connected, it's going to have an impact. And so that's where we talk to them about programs like Positive Action, if anyone's familiar with that. We talk to them about the social development strategy and about doing training for adults who work with youth on how to build those protective factors and how to build those connections and bonds. We talk to them about cognitive behavioral intervention for trauma in schools and reference back about ACEs and connecting all these pieces. And we then also talk to them about youth mental health first aid, and said, these are all things that the group of people who are involved here have the capacity to help you utilize. Reach out to us. And then we also had sort of a vendor show of organizations that were there that had some services to provide from our partner organizations in communities that care. And they had an opportunity to, talk to all of these groups. I manned a table and talked about PACE. I had people come up and ask some very specific questions about the data. And, I was happy to answer that. And, and then we sent them out. And said, thanks for coming, and we're going to follow up with you. And I'm actually really happy to say that there were groups who then said, wait, can we call you? Like, what's this about youth mental health first aid? How do we make that happen? What are you talking about, the social development strategy? What does that mean? How can I do that for my group? And so subsequently we've gone to actually do some of those things. And I really think that was the way that came about, was because we were able to we took data and chose things that had impact on the data that was impacting us. And then we were able to talk to this group of people and say, hey, by the way, we're all in agreement that youth mental health is a concern in our county. And here's the work that we've done already. And here's how we would like to partner with you. So now if you're at a space where you're ready to partner and you're concerned and you're aware of this, then let's go. We're already ready to make some change. And so we're still doing that work. So I think that I'll end by saying that there is always more work to do related to PACE, always. I want to talk about it all the time. I want people to know that it's a thing. And there's always new people to tell about it. But on a very positive note, very recently, I had a conversation with one of a partner organizations involved in our coalition, they actually had requested for PAYS data to be shared with their staff, their volunteers. They had requested this presentation, and that Lee had presented for them. And in this conversation, the director said to me, I was so shocked to find out that there were people who they didn't even know about PAYS. And I'm going to say to you, here's why this was a win for me, right? Because for her, she was surprised. It was such a part of her experience because of the culture that we created in our area, that for her, it was, can you believe that there are people who don't know this? And I said, actually, I'm not surprised, right? I mean, that I do know that that's a thing, but I'm glad that that's not a thing for you, because there was a time where that probably would have been a thing for you as well. And that says that we're doing the right thing. We're teaching people. So it's one day at a time, one step at a time. Use the data to be intentional and figure out how you can tell your story while you're actually using that data at the same time.
Thank you, Erica. That was awesome. And just to share the organization that Erica's referencing, it was Big Brothers Big Sisters. So if you have a Big Brothers Big Sisters in your community, they are poised and ready to have a conversation about PAYS. I've gotten them ready for you. So contact your local Big Brothers Big Sisters. They are ready to be your partner when it comes to PAYS. So thank you, Erica. That was amazing. You know, there's so many pieces in all of that. You know, when we have these conversations, for example, at the We Can Make the Difference event, and Erica's right, we did have people approach us about next steps for their individual organization or their school district. And in fact, we're now working one-on-one with one of our school districts and 28 of their employees and community partners to analyze their PAYS. And part of that is because of the We Can Make the Difference event. So they've reached out to us in hopes that we could help them in this process so that they can correctly identify what their youth are experiencing, and we're there to support them through the whole thing. So our hope is to make that to turn that in, to use this one school district as sort of an example, and they're already on board to engage other school districts in our county to really have this group think essentially about how we're using the Pennsylvania Youth Survey, how we could be using the Pennsylvania Youth Survey, and what we're doing with that information. So thank you. That was great.
Lee, can I share one more thing? I'm so glad that you brought that up, because that's also a phenomenal win, that here was this district administrator saying, hey, I want to do this. And for him, it was so normal of an idea, because he was like, well, what are our other districts doing? And we said, well, they're not there yet. I said, really? Okay, well, we're going to make this a thing for everyone, realistically. So it's so amazing to think, here was this being driven by a school district. And then when I sit back and think, in 2000, when PAYS was done in 2009, we had, I think, 2 school districts that had part of like the representative sample that participated. So it wasn't like full district participation. That was it. And so here we are, 10 years later, where for this particular school district's like, yeah, we're doing this, help us do this. And they were looking to us as experts to say, how can we do this better? How can we use this information for it to drive what we're doing? And every conversation that we have with that particular person in that district now, it's, well, let's look at our data and let's choose things that are intentional. And I'm proud to say that we had some influence in that, right? Because I know that we did, based on the work that, all of this other stuff and that we had presented.
Yep. Thank you. And as Phyllis said in the chat, and Erica referenced this as well, there's always things happening with PAYS. We wouldn't be able to have a webinar every month if we didn't have content, right? So we've got lots and lots of stuff coming up, and we are appreciative of everyone who supports in this process. So thanks again, Erica. So I'm going to go ahead and move on to our next thing. I wanted to take this opportunity to sort of have a group share. Everyone has been listening in to this conversation for the last 40 minutes. And now I wanted to open it up to anyone who is interested in sharing any of their own personal experiences, sharing information about the PAYS, spreading the word in your communities. You know, what are you doing? Yeah, or if you have any questions, we can talk about that too. But I'd really like to hear what you all are doing out in your own communities. So unmute yourself, put it in the chat. We'd love to hear from you.
And Lee, we do have a question from Corinne, if you would like to have her ask it, or.
Yep. So Corinne, I'd like to ask about a plan or timeline for getting the adults trained on all these things to equip them to be more trauma informed and mental health prepared to address the concerns of youth. Those are all things that I want for our coalition or organization, but I need to be patient with implementing all these things. I get too excited. I feel you, Corinne. We always try to like get it all out there. We do the same thing. Erica, did you want to, not to put you on the spot, but did you want to weigh in on this idea of how are we getting adults prepared to and equipping them with all the things that they need to know for to help protect youth in this mental health issue that's happening?
Well, I mean, I'm going to say our group, we, you know, the things that we picked to focus on, it did take some time to figure out how would we be able to offer that widespread to our county. So for example, talking about youth mental health first aid. So we had to, you know, in order, what does it cost to offer youth mental health first aid training? You know, what are all the components to it? And ultimately what our coalition decided to do was to have someone trained as a local trainer for youth mental health first aid. And so we worked with Fayette County Drug and Alcohol as a fiduciary agent to put some funds aside so that we could get one of our volunteers in our coalition to be trained to do that. And now we have her, you know, accessible to us to be able to offer that. So I would say being able to identify what you want to be able to offer, what are the best things and the most reasonable things to ask people to participate in. Figure those out and then craft a plan on how can you bring that to your community? What are those resources that you need in order to be able to do that? So when I mentioned about QPR training, we needed to identify, you know, who are the people that do QPR training in our community and are they connected to our coalition? And if so, are they willing to do that on our behalf? And what would it take to make that happen? When we looked at positive action, it was how are we going to make that happen? For anybody that is familiar with positive action, it was all right, what are we going to do? And ultimately we developed a local positive action trainer as well. So, you know, we really need to I'm going to say my guidance would be figure out what are the things, what are the skills that you want people to have? How can they get those skills? What is the training or programming or whatever that could give them those skills that are going to be as easily sellable to your group? And by sellable, I mean, if we would have just offered QPR training in the spring when we did this We Can Make the Difference event, I don't know that we would have had the number of people sign up that we had come to the event. But we knew they needed it and we gave it to them anyways. And we wove that into something else that we were giving to them and then said, hey, now that we've done this, now you're more equipped. Does that make sense? So we had to think of a strategy on how to get that in front of them as well.
Yeah, and I think that all that makes sense. And I think incorporating PAYS into things like that too, obviously supports the idea that this is something that we need to focus on mental health. But also at the same time, here's us educating a room of 100+ people, information about the PAYS, but also offering them this takeaway as well. So I think that that's important. And it's, again, you know, we're revisiting this idea here. Susan, if she wants to unmute and share, I'd love to hear more. But she says that she is always making sure that they're talking about PAYS during their school climate, during SAP, during youth mental health trauma trainings, and I'm assuming that's what YMH stands for. And also they talk about it at the Luzerne County Safe Schools Committee meeting. So always incorporating that information in there is huge. And then it looks like Catherine is saying that her district has youth mental health first aid and QPR internal trainers. and a cohort who are finishing the trainer course. She's grant funding over the years to pay for these programs. Are there any other trainings pertaining to mental health, suicide that we should be considering for our employees? So other than, you said QPR and youth mental health first aid, those are the big ones. There is also an adult mental health first aid training as well that's available. I believe it has to be done by a different trainer, but I'm not 100% sure.
It is 2 different certifications.
Okay. And but anything else that anybody can share? Okay.
You know what, I'm gonna jump in there too and say to, I'm assuming Catherine that you work for a school district and that's you know what you're questioning. I don't feel like you just have to stop with the employees. Our conversation was how could we train youth to understand and have a conversation with other youth, because that's also really important. They might be the first ones to notice a friend behaving differently or making statements or whatever. And if we're uncomfortable as adults without, you know, if you haven't been through some type of training and learned the language to use and then practiced it to feel comfortable with that, imagine for a young person who many times, especially in the middle school, middle school age, feel awkward and uncomfortable and not wanting to be different and whatever. So I think that's an opportunity, even though that's not something that you asked for. How can you better assist the youth to recognize it in other youth so that they could be partners in that as well? And I just, one other thing, since, you know, I'm unmuted and I can share, I saw in the chat where that was mentioned about connecting PAYS data to SAP. That is something that we do as Fayette County Drug and Alcohol Commission, and try to use that to push that back to schools as sort of a form of SAP maintenance, kind of saying like, you know, here's your SAP referrals and what are the reasons for referrals, and like, let's sort of compare that to your PAYS data, right? If you have X number of kids that are reporting these particular things, the one that I always like to pull out is said that they were drunk or high at school. And I'll say, if you have that number of students who are reporting that, have you caught that number of kids, right? Are there like those discipline incidents where kids have violated policy? And if they have, or if they haven't, you haven't necessarily caught them, have those students been referred to SAP? So like, if the answer is no, I mean, that's not saying you're doing it wrong. That's, I don't want to say that to them, hey, you're doing it wrong, but that's information to look at. Okay, well, if we have kids reporting this, but it's not being reflected over here, how could we, you know, what do we need? Is this an issue of like our staff don't know what to look for? Our staff know and they're not reporting? And, you know, I feel like learning about PAYS has now trained me to like look for the why, you know, to like dig a little bit deeper. And I do that without even thinking, because it's like, okay, how do we take this and look at what could really be happening? And that has come from my involvement in this survey over the last, 10 years. I feel like that's how I've learned how to do that. So, okay, I'll be quiet.
No, thank you. I believe we have someone who is unmuted and they wanted to ask a question or make a comment. So, Alita.
Hi, yes, thank you. I just wanted to mention that we do something very similar. We call it a data day, where we invite community members, school, other agencies. We have students from our student-led CTC group involved in that. And we review all the sections of the PAYS. And from that, then we have a strategic planning day. The majority of the same folks come back for that. And this year we are looking, it won't happen within this school year, but looking into next school year to have one of the teacher or district and service days all be geared around mental health. And so no matter what session they choose to go to, they will be getting some sort of training or TA around mental health, and we will be offering the QPR during one of those sessions, more in-depth information about PAYS. We're going to have the students come in and do a session. One of the questions we asked in the meeting was, what is something you wish your parents would know? And that is an awesome question. If you ever have the opportunity to engage youth, to ask them that. We got so much feedback from what is something you wish your parents or adults would know. And so they're going to kind of do a session on that and just kind of making it more or less a mandatory that you get some sort of education around the mental health of the youth that they're working with. So that's a great collaboration with our district that they're willing to do one of their in-service days in regards to mental health.
Yeah, no, I love that. There's a lot of really great opportunities to make connections between PAYS and school districts and driving all of these pieces together. And I think this is a great conversation. Thank you for sharing, Alita. And then we do have another question in the chat, and this was sort of like segueing into a question that I also had was, I've identified in, the last several years that there's been sort of like certain groups of parents have engaged in what their students are learning in a certain way within the school districts or, in general in life. And I am anticipating in our own communities that we're going to get questioned more this year as PAYS is ramping up in 2023, that we're going to be getting some questions from some of these groups of parents. And I see that Fiona has asked about, getting these questions from parents or from people who are asking questions not because they're interested in the PAYS and wanting for the PAYS to succeed, but could possibly be because they disapprove of the idea of collecting data. Who does this? Who paid for it? How is it done? Those sorts of questions. And then she also said that she's hearing that more resistant type questions are coming from certain parent groups. So I know Sophia had asked Jeff to chime in on that, and I was hoping that he could. So.
Sure, happy to. I have so many thoughts. I will try to share some of them, and hopefully it's in a way that makes sense. My first thought goes to, I've also heard those questions over the years and answered a number of them. Where I usually like to start, depending on the question, there's a frequently asked questions kind of document out on the PAYS site that is awesome for if somebody's asking some of those questions. For example, what a couple of you are referencing in chat, why is this done? Well, there's information in that FAQ for why is it done and what are some of the benefits. If it's somebody who, I see some of the comments in here, government overreach and this shouldn't be done. Well, here's information on why. And I also think this is in the FAQ, but highlighting that this is completely voluntary, both for the school district. Parents have the ability to opt their youth out, or if the youth goes in that day of the survey and they are, for whatever reason, not wanting to participate, it's completely voluntary and there are no negatives for somebody not participating. There are a lot of benefits that are provided to communities to know what's going on. And as I say that, maybe also highlighting how it's not to find out what's going on with an individual child. Now, I also hear, concerns that, well, I wish we knew if there were these concerns about an individual child, we could address them. PAYS isn't for that. In fact, it's not available through PAYS. None of us can find out that information. It's to find out what's going on at a community-wide level so that some of these things can be looked at. I like to use the terms, none of us have unlimited time, talent, and treasure. So as a community, as a county, as a town, as a city, it lets groups use the limited resources at their disposals in the best possible ways, given what makes their community unique. And the information from PAYS is so crucial in being able to know where can those resources be best used and why are some of those things occurring here. Not just, hey, is a lot of kids are using alcohol. Where are they getting it from? What are the parents' beliefs on that? Where all these deeper questions that PAYS gives us that we wouldn't be able to get otherwise. So those are what my initial thoughts are. Phyllis, Elise, anybody else, please feel free to jump in or let me know as I was talking, I didn't really have bullets I was talking of, so I might have forgotten some really important aspects to that question. I think those are great questions that I believe we are seeing more of in today's environment than we were a few years ago.
Jeff, I think you absolutely hit the nail on the head with everything. I mean, you were spot on with, this idea that, letting parents know that they have the option to have their child not take the survey, but also encouraging their student, and the students are encouraged when they take it. If you don't understand a question or you don't feel comfortable doing this, you don't have to. And at the state level, we really try to look and we all know local control, it's a thing. And so we really try to give school districts abilities to be able to talk about this, like the things that Jeff shared, but also to help them navigate through the, not just taking the survey, but all the things we're talking about here. It's also about sharing that information and keeping those parents informed of, hey, did you know we got this kind of info? Half the time these folks don't even know what is on the survey. Right? It's just more of the control factor. And I think it's something that we always have our finger on the pulse, especially with the younger grades. But I think it's important, and that's why also PACE continues to evolve. And we're really, just trying to listen. The other part to it is that to keep in mind that since over 80%, we were, I think, right at about 84% of the surveys this time were done online. And so skip logic can come into play. So if a child or a student is asked, have you ever fill in the blank, and they say no, then they're not going to get a huge number of other questions that might be related to alcohol use or, substance use or that kind of thing. And I think that that's where a lot of the sixth graders are not asked as many questions, because we are able to, again, utilize skip logic within the development. I know in the few instances I've had conversations about, I've heard folks say that even they've said that to parents and they were like, oh, so if they say I've never done it, then you're not going to keep probing one question and we're done, kind of thing. So just keep that in mind as well.
No, thanks for sharing, Phyllis. So just to wrap us up as we are coming up on the 2:00 hour, I did want to launch one quick poll before folks started to drop off. Sophia, if you could do that for us. So one of the things that we're going to be exploring in the future is youth's involvement in PACE. So beyond just their participation in the survey, how do you involve youth in your process? And I know I've heard a couple people say today that, yes, we have youth come and talk at Data Day, or we have youth engage with other youth about the Pennsylvania Youth Survey. So if you are involving youth in any way other than them actually participating in the survey, click yes. And if not, click no. This is going to help us to gather some information for our next series, or next month, which, just a friendly reminder, we will not be meeting in January. Our next webinar will be February 1st. So we will be focusing on engaging youth. So I just wanted to take this moment as we're ending the webinar to have you all participate in this poll for us. And if you've got youth involved in some way, click yes. If not, click no, that's fine too. And anything else from our panelists as we're wrapping up and folks are participating in the poll? And I saw that also Sophia posted in the chat the evaluation link. So if you could click on that and participate in that, that would be super helpful. And if you need to connect with us, here is our information on your screen now. And I hope everybody has a great day and a great holiday, and stay safe.
Thank you for joining.